Your game
Your game.
Your game.
Your game.
is about to get a wake-up call.
Hello and welcome once again to the Red Rooster Golf Podcast. With me is company founder Kerry Moher. I am Brad Fritsch, former PGA Tour player, current Korn Ferry Tour member, and Red Rooster founding partner. Today on this episode of the Red Rooster Golf Podcast, we are honored to have a Masters veteran talking about this year's Masters this week. James Duthie, TSN analyst, TSN golf, TSN hockey, but what he does best, in my opinion, is talk about the Masters. Red Rooster Golf. Join us in waking up your golf glove game, the oft-neglected part of your equipment, and yet ever present on each and every shot you hit. Learn to manage your glove. Make sure it's there to help you, and change it when it's not. Red Rooster Golf. Wake up, shake up, step up, and give. Kerry, I am really looking forward to this interview with James. He's such a media veteran. He grew up in Ottawa, where we're both from. We both remember him. He's about 6 or 7 years older than us. So he was, when he was first starting in broadcasting on the local TV station, CJOH, we were both old enough to be able to tell, like, yep, this guy's new. And then he turns into this amazing media personality. He's written 2 books, both of which I have read, and they're great. They've got great stories about golf and hockey and all this kind of stuff. But what I think he does best is host the Masters, and I can't wait to ask him about it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, he's a funny guy. He's super poised. He jumps around on all this amazing coverage and does it really well. But I still remember him being just kind of like that local TV reporter, and so that's kind of fun to have watched his rise and kind of rooted for him.
Yeah, 100%. He's become a pretty good friend of mine. We worked together once at Augusta. We'll talk about that. One of the favorite things about this interview is we're going to delve into kind of what TSN does at the Masters and how they are able to broadcast certain things and they can't show other stuff because of certain rights issues. CBS has the rights and the Masters doles them out to these international broadcasters, but they can't show everything. And sometimes I like to give James a little bit of crap over that on Twitter the week of the Masters, and he does not like that. So without further ado, let's get to James Duthie, TSN host of The Masters, author of...
Oh, look at that.
The Guy on the Left.
Promoting.
And Beauties, which I can't find at the moment.
Oh, thanks.
Host of Golf, Hockey, World Cup of Soccer, CFL, all kinds of things. James, thank you so much for joining us today.
Have you mentioned on your podcast before, thank you for having me, that you were the editor of multiple of those books?
I have not.
Don't be shy.
I think editor is being polite.
Okay, proofreader.
Proofreader.
Yeah.
One of those times you misspelled my name at the end of the acknowledgement, so I had to fix that for sure.
I have done that multiple times. As a matter of fact, in one of my first books, I spelt my boss's name wrong. And I had sent him a copy to read to make sure everything was okay. That was the Guy on the Left, I think, because there were a lot of stories about work in there. And another person who I work with, like his secretary, I guess, had looked through it and phoned me in a panic and said, "You spelt his name wrong." I'm like, "Oh God." The book wasn't out yet. I still had time to fix it, but I'd already sent him the copy to read.
Right.
So I took some splaining. I had some splaining to do.
That's a good start. We're off to a great start.
Yes.
So, James, let's start from the beginning, man. I remember you at CJOH, which is the local Ottawa TV station. I don't know if you were sports right away or if you were just a local reporter, but start us off with where you went to college, what you went to college for. Was this your kind of ideal career path?
Are your listeners mostly Canadian, Americans, or a little mix, or what?
Both, I'd say.
Okay. So like Brad, I did grow up in Ottawa, and I was a failed athlete. I think most sportscasters are failed athletes in the end, especially sports writers. That's why they have so much anger. But I was a delusional. I was a decent high school football player, and it's hilarious though how dumb I was. I really thought that I was going to get a scholarship to Clemson. That was the school I wanted to go to because the cheerleaders had those orange paws on their face, and I was completely in love with them all. And so that was my fantasy. I was going to go to Clemson and then play for the 49ers probably, or if that didn't work out, I'd play in the CFL. Now, keep in mind, I was a 5'10", 150-pound defensive back with mediocre speed. So I was highly delusional. And so I guess I realized basically late in high school wasn't going to work out. And I thought the next best thing might be being a broadcaster, and ended up going to Carleton University, a good journalism school for the American audience in Ottawa, and got a job as a news reporter, as Brad said, at the local station, and covered fires and murders and all the, I always call it my Ron Burgundy years, because I wasn't Ron Burgundy, but it was very much like that, the goofy little local newsroom where what is it in Ron Burgundy? They're covering the birth of a panda or something. Those would be the stories that I would get. I'd be at the Renfrew cow milking contest doing a live shot here. Oh, Betty's really she's got a large content. She's filling that bucket big time this time. Back to you, Max. But eventually, so I had to do news there weren't a lot of sports jobs back then. People forget, besides the sports anchors at the local stations, ESPN was around in the States, but still fairly young. And TSN was brand new in Canada. And so there weren't a lot of jobs. And so I sort of spent my time in news and finally got the opportunity in sports after, I think I was 29 I probably got a couple of chances in there, but didn't do full-time sports till I was maybe 29 or so. And then TSN found me. I went out to BC for another job and was able to get a gig at TSN. It's actually funny, Brad, as a big Senators fan, the thing that got me the TSN job was the opening night of the Senators when they first returned. No, I was the opening night of the new rink, excuse me.
Okay.
And I did a live shot where I kind of walked around and gave people a tour of the new dressing room. And I had jeans on. I had jeans, a dress shirt, and a jacket on. Usually you'd wear a suit, but I don't know why.
A jean jacket as well?
No, I wasn't the Canadian tuxedo, Kerry. So I had jeans on, and I got a call like a few days later from Keith Pelly, who's now the head of the European tour, who was then the boss of TSN. And Keith said, "Hey, James, I saw you on TV the other night." And I'm like, "Okay." And he goes, "I really like those jeans." And I'm like, "That's the creepiest thing a man's ever said to me." But I guess he just liked the laid back look and my laid back style, and that got me an audition at TSN and eventually landed me the job. So there's a lesson for all you kids out there: wear jeans when you're not supposed to.
Just be yourself.
That's right.
I remember some of the early days at CJOH,
Right.
but tell us more about kind of the big break at TSN. It was fun catching up with Bob Weeks a couple of podcasts ago, just hearing how he sort of, in some ways, sort of stumbled into his role at Score Golf. And so, I mean, was it literally this, Keith Pelly, the Gene incident, or what was
that's what started it. So that got me an audition. So when Pelly called me and told me he liked my jeans, he said, "I want to have you in for an audition." And I still remember it was a pouring rain day and taking the cab in from the airport in Toronto and thinking to myself, this is it. It's almost like, I'm sure you had those moments, Fritchie, or when, you're in the last group, whether it was that tournament you won or, that time you were in it in Pebble or a couple of the other places, you're sitting, and I don't know how you golfers do it because I get nervous playing like a $10 match. But I remember going in that cab ride going, this is it. This is your shot. If you screw this shot up, you're never going to get another shot, and you're going to be, nothing wrong with Ottawa, but you'll be doing local sports in Ottawa for the rest of your life. And I did pretty good on my audition. I can remember Jim Van Horn, who you guys might remember, quite a famous anchor in Canada, and he was anchoring the 6 o'clock sports that day, and I was doing my audition in the middle of the afternoon. And I guess he was watching me, and he put his head around the corner after my first take, and he said, "More energy. You need more energy." And I guess I did a better second take. So I always thought I kind of owed Jim Van Horn the job. Funny thing was, I didn't get the job right away. And I was I moved out to Vancouver, and Keith said, I really want to hire you, but I have to give this job to somebody else. And I said, okay, I'm going to move out to Vancouver. I want to live there for a couple of years. So, don't call me for a couple of years. And he called me in 5 months, I think, and offered me the job hosting NBA and CFL were my first 2 gigs on TSN. And so that's kind of how it happened.
Very cool. I like that. I like that kind of, your one-time shot in the cab ride. You're right. It's sometimes it does come down to that, right? Like, this is my one chance. Here we go.
Nerve-wracking. And if you blow
totally.
if you blow it, you're never going to get back there. So I guess I was, fairly proud of myself. I'd like to see that tape because I've never really actually seen it, right? But I guess I did okay.
So, James, as a golfer, how did you come to the game, and what's your game like now? Where do you play most of your golf? I've seen a few clips of you with the guys at TSN and your famous matches that you've played. But yeah, how did you start out, and what do you like now?
I started out. So I lived in Blackburn Hamlet, which is a little suburban community in Ottawa, and just your typical middle-class suburban neighborhood. And my dad was not a golfer. So I fell in love with golf on TV growing up in the 70s. Calvin Pete was my favorite golfer. So Calvin Pete made me fall in love with the golf. Guy never missed a fairway. And but I would go to, there was a mini golf in our neighborhood. And, my parents, I had a best buddy named Mark, and my parents would basically get rid of us during the summer. We had nothing to do. So, 10, 11 years old, my mom would drop me off at the mini golf at 8:00 in the morning. And I can remember, you paid like $2 for a round, but you had a chance to win a free game at the end, like the old mini golfs did sometimes. And I think we found a way to cheat. So we'd always win free games. So we would play like 6 rounds of mini golf. And there was a driving range there. We'd hit a bucket of balls sometimes, but weren't very good. And I think maybe when I was 14, I'd never played around, and I got an old set of golf clubs, and Pineview Municipal Golf Course was the first golf course I ever played on. But I didn't have much money, and my dad was real cheap. So Mark and I would get up at 3:30 in the morning, and I'd walk the 5 minutes to my friend Mark's house. I'd throw rocks at his window to wake him up. We would get the OC Transpo bus to drop us off at Pineview, and we'd sit on the first tee in the dark, because where the clubhouse was at Pineview, it wasn't really near the 18th green. So if we got through 9 holes before anybody showed up at the clubhouse, we could walk off 18 and get back on the bus, and nobody would know we were there. So we were playing illegally, but we kind of justified it in our heads, our 14-year-old's heads, saying, well, you're probably allowed to play if nobody else is there, right? So we would be out before the greens crews. Terrible golfers. I remember our rule, we let ourselves tee it up on the fairway all the time. So every shot was off a tee. But I suppose that's where I really fell in love with the game. And I have really sentimental, hokey memories of us sitting on that first tee watching the sun come up. I just actually went out to visit Mark this week in Newfoundland, so where he lives. And so that was it. And that's where I played most of my golf. Was pretty lousy, stayed pretty lousy, but stayed playing a lot, played all over Ottawa. Had 3 kids in 3.5 years, and my golf game, that's when I met you, Fritchie, was in the middle of my kids' time, where I was playing like 2 or 3 rounds a year, and I was pretty bad. I played with Fritchie in I think the Gretzky tournament.
Yeah.
I wasn't your partner, but you were partnered with somebody else or something in my group, and so now I play a lot. I'm completely and utterly obsessed with the game. I love it. I'm not necessarily great. I like to say John Rahm type swing, which is another way of saying I don't really get back far enough. I had shoulder surgery when I was young from a football injury. So I was down to like a 7.7 at the end of a year ago, which was the lowest I've ever been. So I found my way to get decent with, mediocre abilities. I think I was back up to like a 9 or maybe 10.1 or 9.8 at the end of last year. So, but I play at King's Riding here in Aurora, Ontario. I play at Coppenwood, and I'll play wherever people will let me play. I play over at TPC a lot. And unlike Brad Fritch, I have played Augusta National. Boom. I would drop the mic if it wasn't attached to the floor.
You could, but I have played there once, James. Come on, man.
Well, you could drop the
I should-
mic on me.
Yeah, drop it on Kerry because I have played it once.
So, well, we did an amazing event at Coplandwood last summer. We've been out there a couple times. I mean, we played it just before, it was actually during the club championship, and greens were running like, I don't know, 12-5, and it's just that's a special place and just like an awesome membership.
Paul, the general manager of Coplandwood, and I are friends from his days back. He used to be at Angus Glen, where I used to live, and so yeah, it's a really. I haven't got out there nearly enough, just because I had a really busy couple of years. But I hope to be out there every second day this year.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, I played there a lot last summer, and it definitely grew on me. I played it years and years ago, and I didn't have much of a memory of the place. And then I played it probably 6 or 7 times last year, and it's actually hosting the Canadian Open Monday qualifier. So I'm
Nice.
glad I got to play it a lot last year, because I'm going to try to, I'm going to do
amazing.
it this year and see what.
And
see what
King's Riding doesn't have the reputation of some of those courses, but it's only 3 minutes from my house, and I joined there years ago, and I decided I had enough time finally with my kids old enough to join a golf course, and I'd never even played it when I joined it. I just joined it purely out of proximity, but it's really grown on me. It's a quirky track. It's not super long, but I love it. I always defend it to everybody who ever talks about KR.
Yeah, I've actually never played there. I've heard enough about it, but I've never played there.
Fun place.
So basically, we've just covered the content of your book, The Guy on the Left. And for people who don't know what that means, you're the guy on the left side of the TV screen who hosts TSN shows.
Right.
Whether it's NHL Trade Center, the trade deadline show, and one that's fondly connected to myself, which was Augusta National and the TSN involvement at the Masters.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no longer involved with that broadcast. We can talk about that later. However, we wanted to bring you on because it's Masters Week, and you've been there a lot, and we kind of want to delve into your background on the Masters and what it's like being there every year, what you look for that makes it special for you, and kind of what that week is like for you. So I guess first start off, when's the first time you hosted the Masters on site?
Can you hear my dog snoring, by the way, in the background? If you do,
That's
like,
amazing.
if for the listeners, if there's some weird noise coming through the microphone, my dog is snoring quite loudly, and I'll share the story. I'm a little bit terrified of this podcast if it goes too long, because I did one a couple of weeks ago, and my dog is kind of disabled. Her back legs don't work very well, so she just is wherever I am. She's in the room. She likes to be near me all the time. But I will say this really delicately, not to offend your audience, but she has a little bit of trouble with her bowel control, and so when she has to go, it just kind of comes. So let's just say there was a little number 2 that happened right on the chair behind me at the beginning of this podcast, and it was a fairly serious podcast, and so I didn't. I turned the computer so you couldn't see her, but the smell that I had to deal with for an hour straight, and this poor guy's asking me all these detailed questions, and I was just going, "Oh God, I'm gonna die." So forgive poor Willow, but she's doing great right now. Question again. Okay, so my first Masters was 2002, which was the year before Weirzy won, and the first one after 9/11. So I'm not sure why I got to go to that one. I think back in those days, TSN kind of rotated through. Maybe Rod Black used to be our Masters host, and perhaps that year he was doing something with the NBA, and so I got a chance to go, and then didn't go for a while until maybe 10 years ago. It became sort of my regular gig to go. I think about 10 years ago. So I've been coming every year since then, and it's my favorite week of the year. It and the World Juniors I love the World Junior Hockey Championship for folks in the States. It's much bigger in Canada than it is in the States, but that happens at Christmas. But the Masters, and I'm not telling you anything you guys don't know, but I just think there's beyond the tournament itself and how great the place is and how great the tournament is, Masters Week always feels like the start of everything in Canada in particular. usually the snow's starting to melt and golf season's, a week or two away. The NHL playoffs are starting either the next week or usually around the same time, the NBA playoffs, and summer's ahead, and we've gotten through long winters. And I think for some reason in Canada, I feel this way, that the Masters Week has come to symbolize kind of the start of all the good stuff that's ahead for you. So beyond how great the golf part is, I think there's an extra element of what makes it special in Canada. And so I've always loved it. It never gets old. As you know, Fritzy, it's long days. It's funny. I was at the, I cover the Super Bowl as well. And the Super Bowl, I can't tell my bosses this, is a relatively easy gig. We're there the whole week, but we do like one little panel hit a day, and then I cover the game. And so it's a breeze. Whereas the Masters, we're at the course, 7 a.m. every day. We don't get out of there till 8 or 9 o'clock at night, but I still love every single second of it. And it never, ever gets old. When we arrive on Sunday or Monday the week before and walk the course for the first time again, it just doesn't matter how many times you're there. It's always fantastic.
Yeah, that's amazing. So 2003 was the first time I ever set foot. That was the year that Weir won. And so talk about 2002, the first time you got there, like just the first time you got on the grounds.
Well, I'll take it back a little bit before the grounds, because in my, when I grew up watching the Masters every week, you see the CBS coverage and it's always looks so perfect. And in my little fantasy, I imagined if I ever got to go to the Masters, which I didn't think I ever would, that you would be driving down some winding country lane through the Georgia pines and come across Magnolia Lane, right? That was my image in my head. And so I get there and, Augusta, God love it, is like, not a pretty town. And so the first morning of the Masters, I'm all excited, and you're driving up this seedy strip. And I remember there's a Hooters there, and there was like a Hooters girl with a hula hoop out on the sidewalk, and we're in traffic, and she's doing her little hula hoop going, "Come on in for the Masters Hooters breakfast special." I'm going, this is not what little me imagined when I was pulling up to the Masters. So it's a weird contradiction, that town and that street to what's just around the corner. Because in the old days, I think you could almost hit that Hooters from the driving range. Now Augusta's slowly buying up the entire town, so none of that might be there in 10 years. But again, when you pull on the grounds, and the one thing I usually tell people, so many places in life that you'll see on social media, television, whatever, magazines, and you say, "Oh, I want to go there," and it doesn't necessarily, when you get there, meet your expectations, because you always see the prettiest shots on TV or whatever, and you get there and it's not quite what you hoped it would be or thought it would be. And Augusta National is one of the few places, and I hear this from most people that go there, that exceeds your expectations. Somehow, as pretty as it looks on television, as neat as it looks, it somehow exceeds that. I'm not sure how, but that's just the way I feel there every time. There's not a piece of garbage anywhere. There's not a piece of straw that's out of place on the ground. It's just amazing. And the whole idea with no cell phones and no scoreboards, although it's a royal pain in the ass for me as a broadcaster, there's no other sporting event in the world where it's impossible to do your job because you can't use your phone or have a computer or anything. But it is wonderful to be walking around where nobody's on their phone. People are just talking to each other. And I think, I've never heard the reasoning Augusta National does this, but I feel like they want to take you back to, the 1930s or 40s, and feel like you've gone back in time a little bit. And I do think they succeed that way.
So the one time that I did go there for work.
Let's hold on now. Before you always slag me about the fact that it was only one time, but I did get you on that one time. You have to give me some credit for making it happen.
No, I totally do. I think you were in my corner. I guess 4 or 5 people couldn't do it, and so I was guy number 6. Yeah. No. So I was going to say the one time I was there for work, it was hard for me to imagine it just as a golf club, because there's so much other stuff around it. So
Right.
in my head, I try to take the buildings, the grandstands, just all the extra stuff that's there, and what's it going to be like when all this stuff leaves? I don't even know if it does ever leave. I don't know
It
because I
does.
haven't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So but the place is magnificent. The one thing that I was amazed by right away, I think I was standing right beside the putting green, which is right beside the 10th tee, and you could see the 10th green in the distance, and the thing is tiny, and it's so far down there too. And I'm like, it looks like it's 800 yards down there. It looks the
Yeah.
size of a postage stamp. Like, what the hell's going on?
Right.
The elevation changes. Everyone's probably heard this, but you won't believe the elevation changes until you go there. You
Right.
just it's impossible to imagine. The other thing, and I'm sure you felt this when you played it, James, the greens aren't that big, most
No.
of them. And the thing that got me was 9 and 18. You always see them surrounded horseshoe wise with people, right? And they always seem like, it's a big space to hit it on. 18 is small from left to right, from side fringe to side fringe. It's not very big, and I didn't hit a great drive, and I think I had to hit a 5-iron, and I'm like, this is not going to happen. I'm not going to hit this green. It's always interesting to see golf courses without the grandstands because they frame it so well, and the people frame it, and you feel more comfortable. You kind of see your shot better. But that was the one thing that kind of amazed me was once you took the people out of it, it's such a big, wide open piece of property for the most part. Some
So
holes are tree lined, but some aren't.
just before I comment on that, I'm sorry to play host here, but I was curious. So you actually preferred, like, as a golfer, when you had people around the green like that, and like, it
Oh
helped you
yeah,
frame your shot much better.
100%. And I've played a few events where one year they had grandstands and one year they didn't. So a lot like on the Corn Ferry Tour, the Canadian Tour, like those are kind of
Right.
flip of the coin, right? Whether they can afford the grandstands to put there. And one year it was actually a course in Georgia, Valdosta, Georgia, and the 18th hole is a son of a bitch. It's like 530-yard par 4.
Right.
And so you're hitting a long iron or a hybrid in. One year it seemed pretty easy because they had a grandstand around the entire green. And the next year it was gone. And all of a sudden I'm like, look at that little speck in the distance I'm supposed to hit it onto. It just completely changed it. It's just a frame of reference in your mind that helps a lot.
Well, I've always said that, like, the big advantage you guys have, is when there are grandstands around. I've always thought if you had, a 2 or 3 stroke lead on 18 somewhere, just to bomb it into grandstands, which I'm sure guys have done before, right?
Mm-hmm.
They still do it. As a matter of fact, just the tournament I was watching last week, the match play, the guys, I can't remember the hole is with the water on the left, and guys were doing it on purpose, but one of them hit the grandstands and it went all the way in the water, so it didn't work out well. But when I played on the Monday after, so for your listeners, there's a draw every year. So about 20, I guess 20, maybe 25 members of the media get to play on the Monday. And I won in my third year there, which was just a massive thrill. I never in my dreams did I think I'd get to play the course, let alone be there. And the first thing that struck me was the grandstands were still up. They didn't take them up till down later in the week. But when there's no people there, you realize what a wide open property it is there. There's so
Yep.
much green. There's so much grass and greenery when there aren't people there. Which that was probably the first thing that struck me when I played that round. And the way the grandstands are set at Augusta National, it's not like a normal PGA Tour event where, you could get bounces off people, but there's not that many grandstands that surround greens that you're going to get
Right.
those breaks that you get on a normal PGA Tour course. I hit a grandstand. I went for the green in 2 on 15, and was so scared I wasn't going to make it over. I actually killed it and hit the grandstand that is like 50 yards behind the green. So it wasn't my finest moment, but no, it really is an amazing place to go. And I always tell people, if you ever get the chance to go, like, go to the practice rounds on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, which are easier tickets to get. Still not the easiest tickets to get, but in some ways it's better because there's a little less people. It's you can bring cameras and actually take pictures. You can't bring your cell phone, but you can bring. They allow cameras, which you can't on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And the great sort of juxtaposition of the Masters is, while it is my favorite week, it is the hardest golf tournament to cover on the golf course, because first of all, we don't get inside the ropes. A lot of tournaments we go to, we get inside the ropes. Even like the Open Championship, we can walk inside there. You have your phone. There's scoreboards everywhere. At Augusta National, if you're trying to cover it, you're just in there with the patrons. So if I'm trying to watch Tiger, I'm probably 15 people deep. I can only see the tip of his cap. You have no idea what's going on in the rest of the course. All you hear is the roars once in a while and go, oh, where was that? What happened there? Try to figure out what group was there. And then maybe 10 minutes later on the little wooden scoreboard, somebody puts up an eagle for someone. So when people ask me, where were you when this happened? Where were you when Spieth hit 2 in the water on 12? Or, usually I was in the truck or in the media center watching the tournament. That's the curse of the job, is that I'll usually go out in the morning, but you end up having to watch the end of the tournament like everybody else on TV, because there's no way you can cover it properly when you're out there watching it.
So, James, when you played on the Monday, when do they do the draw? Like when do you know you're playing?
I did not find out until Sunday. There's kind of 2 different draws. One is TV, one is print. I think the print guys find out on Saturday, and I didn't find out till Sunday at about noon. It was really interesting because once you win the draw, you can't play for 7 years. Bob Weeks had just won the year before me. After 20 years, it took him to win. And the other guys on our crew, Brad will remember, Puffy and Jamie, the producers, they had already won. So I was kind of the only one that had a chance. And I kind of had a feeling that year that I'd have a decent chance to win. I brought my clubs and everything. And there's in the media center, which has now changed from when you were there, Brad, but we have a little office in the media center. And I was sitting in there on Sunday morning, and there's a guy who runs the media center who has a green jacket. And I barely knew him. He barely talked to me, but he knocked on the door and said, James, can I speak with you for a second? And I knew right away. And he hands you this little envelope, and it's got the official Masters invitation on it. It's just the coolest thing ever. Now, Kerry, the embarrassing part for me, so we're supposed to leave. We all leave early Monday morning to go catch a flight. So my crew left, and I was alone in our rental house and, waiting for a cab to come and, putting on the carpet, nervous as heck. And I looked in my bag for the first time. I only had 1 ball in my bag because, in Canada, you pull your bag right out of the garage, right? Because it's April 5th or whatever. And I wasn't hitting it in simulator.
Yeah.
I'll go in Sims now in the winter, but I wasn't doing that back then. And so really dusted off my clubs and chucked them in a bag to bring them and never checked the ball count. So now it's like 8:00 in the morning and I'm supposed to be there at 9 or whatever. And I've got 1 ball. And I texted Bob Weeks, asked him if the pro shop's open at Augusta, and he said he didn't know. So the cab driver, I says, are there any golf stores open? And she says, only thing open on a Monday morning is Walmart. So I say, take me to Walmart. And all they had at Walmart was like Top Flight Hot XL. And so I showed up at Augusta National, no offense, Top Flight, but you know what I'm talking about here, with like a dozen Top Flight Hot XLs at Augusta National. And I get to the range, and they really do it up right. First of all, you get a locker in the Champions locker. I think I had Fuzzy Zeller's locker. And cool. You go down to the range, and all the caddies, 20 caddies or whatever, are in their whites and lined up behind each spot on the range. So whatever spot you pick, that's your caddy basically. So I just picked a spot, and the balls there, of course, they're Pro Vs with the Augusta National logo on them. Just gorgeous balls, right? And so I say to my caddy, oh God, I just got these Top Flight Hot XLs. And he looks at me and he kind of like rolls his eyes and he just turns around, as in, I know what you're going to do, but I don't want to see this. And I just piled a dozen of the Augusta Pro Vs in my bag. Just shameful stuff.
You had to, actually. I
had to. There's, even just for souvenirs' sake. So,
I love how he turned around. He was like, oh boy.
Yeah.
This
There
guy.
you go. I've
The
seen
other
this
thing
one
it's
before.
the other thing that's funny about I learned about the caddies. Uh, like I was playing with three people in my group. None of them were very good. There was a director from the BBC, a nice woman who was there, a guy who was the chairman of Srixon, so right from I believe Japan or Korea, and nice guy, didn't speak a word of English, not very good golfer, surprisingly. And the fourth guy was actually good. He was a Swedish pro who was doing Swedish commentary. He's still on the Euro Tour, I think. And so one really great guy and two awful golfers, and me, on the low scale. But I realized that with the two guys who weren't good at all, and they might have done it for me a couple times, I don't know. The caddies would go ahead, like they would line up, or two of them would go down the fairway to find the balls, like basically if they were hit erratically. And I sort of caught them walking up, I think it was 9. And the two people I was with had hit terrible drives way into the woods, and they just chucked them. They just chuck them out on the fairway.
Nice.
So this girl comes up and she's like, "Wow, I got a really good break there." Yeah,
Again,
you did. Yeah, you did. Wow, this is
It's
going
like-
amazing for me. These fairways
Yeah.
are so wide.
just like on 3 and 5 and 7, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So the year that we worked together, it was 2017. Sergio Garcia won. A tornado ripped through Augusta on Wednesday.
Right.
DJ slipped on the stairs. He
Right.
withdrew, number 1 player in the world. A lot of stuff happened that week. I always tell people my vivid memory of that is we ran over to the Spanish broadcasting room, and those guys called Sergio winning. I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, that was really cool because they were right next to us almost.
They were right next to us. Yeah, like where we hung out and prepped.
Yeah.
And did all our stuff. What I don't know if you can. I'm sure they kind of one runs into another, but since we worked together there, what was your kind of memory of that week?
Was that the year? So, well, that the Johnson thing was something because, we do our work early in the week is the fun part really for us of the Masters in the sense that from Thursday to Sunday now, and I'm not sure I think we had that, Brad, when you were there, but we do like a 5 hours of the stuff before network coverage comes on.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yep.
yeah, Canada, what is on ESPN Plus in the States, the different feeds, we do an actual show so Brad and Bob Weeks were my analysts and I'm hosting, and on certain TSN channels you can watch Amen Corner and 15 and 16, and we sort of guide people through on one of the channels where we bounce back and forth, and Brad did analysis in the middle. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we don't really do much. We go to the course, do one panel hit, walk around, and then come back and drink a few beers, watch hockey in our house. And so I think that was, I'm trying to think, was it Tuesday maybe that DJ wiped out?
No, it was Wednesday.
We were already like in our, sitting around in our shorts with
Yeah.
a beer open, and suddenly we had to redo everything and did it from the backyard in
Yep.
pouring rain, I think, right?
Yep. Yeah. The Augusta National was closed. Like they said, everyone get out of
Now,
here.
was that also the year that we were on the set when the lightning hit?
Yes. That's the
and-
same day, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we running for our lives.
Yeah, it
Like,
was a scary storm.
It was, because it was a good 400 yards back to the TV compound, but we had this metal stage on the par 3 course that was TSN, and so
Right.
we were kind of caught in the middle. I remember you ran off first.
Of course I did.
No, that's fine. You left
Every
us
man
behind.
for himself.
Yeah, we're not the Rangers.
We'll get another analyst next year. And we were right.
Yeah, you were right. But that was a super memorable week because DJ was like the clear number 1 player in the world. It was his tournament to lose, and all of a sudden he was gone.
Yeah.
So,
but
what
remember,
was-
he walked right up to the first tee though before he withdrew. He went and he warmed up the next day and walked up, did the full walk to the tee, and then said, "I can't go." So there was huge drama of whether he would play or not. But yeah, that was a mammoth story. You just reminded me too. The other really interesting year was the COVID year, which was horrible for the atmosphere, and I'm sure for people watching at home TV. But in many ways, it's my favorite Masters because without anybody there, we got a close up view like you would never get, and that's the one year that defied what I was talking about, where I actually watched the entire thing because First of all, DJ was up by 5 strokes or something that November Masters, and we could go and walk. There was nobody there, besides the organizers, a few family members, and such. There was nobody on the golf course. In fact, if you watch the tape, Puffy and I show up in about 10 shots. Well, DJ is going down the stretch the last 9 holes. So, and on Thursday, I think I followed Tiger for 9 holes, and the gallery was myself, Tiger's now ex-girlfriend, Tiger's manager, and 2 officials. But so for 9 holes, you're right next to Tiger Woods for every shot playing the Masters, which is something I'll never forget.
So
Don't want it to ever happen again, but
it was kind of like a live event. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah. It was.
Okay. But we can transition into this year's Masters. Like, there's some pretty good storylines going on with the battle at number 1 in the world between the 3 guys, Scheffler, Jon Rahm, Rory McIlroy, all playing very well. And then there's the live players who it's kind of hard to tell what kind of form they're in. And if they happen to win, I think the entire world of professional golf kind of gets turned on its ear for a couple of weeks at least. What are kind of the things that you're focusing on for this year's Masters?
Well, look, every Masters has a million storylines, but I think this year it's fivefold because not the live thing is, I think, probably at the top of the list. And then there's also the rule changes with the ball and everything being talked about. So we're going to have no shortage of stuff to talk about. I think the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday are going to be probably the most interesting early days of Masters Week that we've had in a long time, just seeing, the interaction between the live players and the tour players. And though I don't like the guy, something like a Patrick Reed, Rory, final round on Sunday would be an amazing story, right? Something like that. I think DJ's a little more likable, and Cam's a little more likable. Any of those live guys that are, in it with Rory or Spieth or someone down the stretch, I think would be, or Rahm would be an amazing storyline. So I'm kind of like secretly cheering for one of them to be in the hunt because I just think that I don't really want them to win. I don't have any like real dislike or hatred towards the live guys. And if somebody threw that kind of money, I understand it all, but I still, don't really root for it to succeed, only because selfishly as a viewer of the PGA Tour, I want to see the best fields for every event. I don't want to see half the guys overplaying in these irrelevant live events. I want everybody together. So, in that way, I resent live in general, but not the individual players so much. But I just think from a story perspective, and that's all we really chase in this job is stories. If one of them was in the hunt, it would be pretty cool.
I was going to say, you're definitely a journalist. Like, you're looking for the chaos, right? You just want
chaos is the greatest thing that you could have in a situation like this. The
more interesting storylines, the better.
Right.
I'm going to compliment you here, and then I'll throw it over to Kerry. But
hold on, I just want to record with my phone.
When we had that week together at the Masters, I'm constantly trying to figure out what to say, and it's like you had more to say than the time that we had to give you on camera. And you're on camera a lot because you're the host, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how seamless it was, how easy it seemed to be. I'm sure it's not easy, but now it's probably old hat for you. I was really impressed kind of seeing behind the scenes how you do your work. I mean, I was watching you prep for a couple hours in that international TV compound. I'd be sitting there thinking, about one player, and here's your, notes are 9, 10, 12 pages long. I was super, it was really something to watch. Honest to God. It was, and Bob too, same thing, like the way he can kind of cycle through storylines.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember one thing. I think the listeners will be interested in this. I can't remember if it was Tuesday or Wednesday, and we were doing a hit right in front of the clubhouse. So underneath the big tree around the first tee. And, I started to say something about Jason Day and how I thought he wasn't a great fit to win at Augusta because at the time, I haven't really paid attention to his game lately, but he was kind of one speed. He was a one speed guy. And at Augusta, it's so subtle and you need 3/4 shots. And anytime you're off and you go long, it's disaster. And I caught myself and I'm like, I can't say this about a top 10 player in the world. Like, I'm the 340th ranked player in the world. I can't say this. And Jamie, the producer, goes, no, that's why you're here. You have to say this stuff. And I'm rolling my eyes like, oh my God, I know the shit I'm going to take on, on Twitter, on social media, anyone who comments on TSN threads, like, why does this guy have the right to say this about Jason Day?
Right.
But that's what makes it good, right? That's what makes television good, is you have to step back and take like that honest assessment, not just, oh, what is this one person going to think, of what I say. I thought that was that was an interesting part of the job, I thought.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you on what you said. I do prepare a lot. I would say that I think it's probably deep-rooted insecurity that you don't know enough or that you're not good enough. And so prepare, and you don't end up using 90% of it. But at least you feel more comfortable. I know that the only times people always say, do you ever get nervous on TV? The only times I get nervous are when I'm not prepared. When I get, something, I get thrown on a sport I don't know or something like that. So, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. You did a great job that week, by the way. I know we joke about it a lot. No, but you did. It's funny. I'll tell Kerry this. Like, Brad only jokes about that he was only there 1 year, and a part of it, I think, I can't remember. My old boss back then, he wanted someone that was like a regular on the PGA Tour. And Dillette stepped in, I think, a little bit afterwards. But the only other thing that was funny is you had your hair long crazy back then. And I should have warned you before the tournament. Like the boss back then, he was like a real stickler on stuff, and he liked short hair. So he's like, tell that Fritch guy he's got to get his hair cut if we're going to have him back. He's got to get his hair cut. Classic.
Yeah, it was pretty long. It was not good.
Can you guys say something smart for 30 seconds? Because my computer just told me it's going to turn off because my battery's not plugged in. So say something witty and I'll plug in my computer. Just a second.
100%. Kerry, what do you think about going into this year's Masters?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody wants some sort of live story. And to me, it has to be one of the villains, because there are a lot of live players who have a lot of support, who people totally understand. Like if DJ wins the Masters, to me, like that's not going to be near as newsworthy as, like if Bryson DeChambeau, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he doesn't seem to be informed.
Very interesting for your listeners, I know. Hang on, bear with me.
He's multi-talented.
Oh,
well, at least
my God, this is hilarious.
At least you're not putting on a diaper, so that's a good sign.
This is like my kids at night trying to argue whose charger is theirs, plugging in their school computers and plugging in their phones at night. Yeah, this is chaos at work.
James, this is further proof of your preparation.
Don't prepare for podcasts the way I prepare to go on air at the Masters. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
One other thing, though, it's also, as much as I love it, it's an interesting day because we're a bit of a bare bones operation, and we're doing 4 hours from Thursday to Sunday before CBS comes on. CBS with a crew of God knows 200 people, multiple producers in the truck. Each of the analysts has somebody in their ear telling them what's coming up next. Okay, Jim Nantz, we're going to 13 now. Corey Connors' second shot. He's got a 5-iron. He's got 198 out or whatever. Well, we have none of that. And so all I have is the feeds that I'm watching. And so on the channel that we jump back and forth on, we never know what's coming next. And so every year I have a little bit of... I'm always somewhat nervous about it, because basically they'll say, okay, we're going to cut to hole number 12 now. And they just take it. And I have to guess I have to hopefully identify the golfer, from behind, who's going to shoot or whatever. So I'm always trying to watch the range and see what guys are wearing that day, because it's just a crapshoot of what I'm going to get. I have no idea what they're going to cut to next. And so I'll be like, okay, I think that's Brian Harmon. No, Paul Casey. Yeah, so it's a weird experience.
I've got two questions for you. Just getting back to the golf course, because that always fascinates me. Brad talked about like first impressions, just how big and grand and all the different elevation changes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing to walk it, and something totally different to play it. So what's maybe one thing that jumped out at you from actually playing it? Because I'm sure you've walked it so many times, and you're analyzing it, from a PGA Tour player's perspective, and I've done that because I rate golf courses, and so it's a totally different hat and experience versus you're out there from the member tees, so that's a different experience yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
just like, what's one thing that surprised you when you played the course that you hadn't noticed, as a patron, I guess?
Well, a couple things. First of all, I think it was more playable than I thought it would be, because the intimidation that you have standing on that first tee. You really, there's a lot of pretty big fairways now. They've again, a lot of change since I played. I was at 2015 or something. Now I play whatever year Danny Willett won, and so it's even changed a little bit since then. But it's a pretty playable golf course from the members' tees. And I'm a big fan of golf courses that if you screw up, if you slice or pull your drive into the woods or whatever, I'm a fan of golf courses where you can find your ball and, have a decision to make of, okay, maybe you take a chance and try to really advance it or just advance it sideways. There's a lot of Ontario courses where, they're just cut out of the bush, right? So if you hit it left or right, it's in the bush and it's gone, right? And you're 3 off the tee, or most cheaters will take laterals anyway, but you know what I'm saying. So I love Augusta that I like my tee shot on 2 was a slice right, and I was 20 yards in the trees, but sitting beautifully on top of the pine needles, and okay, I can go this way. It's like a little game of Plinko, or I could, and just all those decisions I think were I loved absolutely. So it's one of those courses I'd love to have another chance on if my nerves were a little better, because I felt like I walked off feeling like I could have played way better. The other thing I would say, Brad was talking about the size of the greens. I think the targets on the greens, like there was a lot of times on 3 of the par 5s, I laid up, wimpy, or I was in trouble, so I had to lay up. But I was always a perfect distance, like 90, 100 yards out or whatever. And if you missed, I'm not the most accurate wedge player, especially over water at Augusta National. So, I'd hit it to a spot I thought was pretty good, like 15 feet away, and always would roll to like 40, 50 feet. Like every hole I had a 50-footer, it felt like. And so I ended up 3-putting, I don't know, 11 times or something like that. And the other thing was the greens were, everyone talks about the greens, and they are as crazy as people imagine. But, with the caddy, they're so pure that I don't think they're impossible greens. The speed was really hard, but I actually loved putting on them because they're absolutely perfect, right? And how many times guys like me, hackers playing around, play courses with terrible greens, you never know what it's going to do. And they were so perfect that when the caddies gave the first hole, I can remember I was aiming at a certain spot and the caddy's like, no. And he walked 7 feet away from where I was. So that was a wake up call right away, because they are as undulating as you would imagine. But, once he gave me a decent line, like most of my putts were pretty good, but I would, no matter how gentle I tapped it, I'd always end up like 8 feet by. And then all day I just missed the comebackers all day. But that was just on me. Like I just was nervous and not a great putter. And so I just kept missing them. And that's why I 3-putted all the time. So I walked away thinking, with a caddy and with my game in form, I could play decently off here. I really think I could. And, but the intimidation of the place is just unreal. The other thing, Bob Weeks told me this. He said, it's going to be the fastest round of golf you ever play because you don't want it to end. And that's so true. I felt like I was on 18 in an hour and a half, right? It was
just flew by.
It was unreal. Oh, the other one thing I learned, that there is a bush on 10 that I've never seen before on television until I hit it. And I made a 9 on 10 because I think I tried to hit it out of the bush then and then had to take an unplayable. So anyway, I'd never seen that bush on television before. And then maybe 3 years ago, Rory hit the bush, and I was in the TV compound. I said, "Hey, that's my bush! It's on TV finally."
Justice. It
That's
is in
good,
play.
that's good.
It is in play. I'm not the only one to ever hit it.
That's
amazing.
awesome. Well, my second question is there an Augusta story? Maybe even just like a recent one. Maybe it's a guest. Maybe it's an experience, just something given, your kind of access. You're there so long during the week. Is there something that you could share that maybe haven't something unique about Augusta or the people or?
I got so many. It's trying to narrow it down to something that'll actually entertain people.
I've already got the egg salad sandwich, so that's not it.
I'll instead tell like three little quick ones. Like the first time is always amazing. In 2002, I was there, and they used to. I'm not sure if they still do this anymore, but they used to keep the top 2 rows of the bleachers open for media, which was one real advantage where you could actually get to see a lot on the golf course. And that was
Right.
the year Tiger won that year, beat Retief Goosen. They were in the last group, but VJ was in it and Ernie was in it. And that Sunday, that was before we did these 5-hour shows and post shows. So we only had to do about a 4-minute little panel afterwards. So I had time to be out on the golf course, and I was running, which you're not supposed to do at Augusta National. I was warned a couple of times. I really had it figured out in my mind. Okay, I got to see Ernie play 13 because he's 2 back, and I got to see VJ play 15. And I ran and I saw every relevant shot. Ernie and VJ both hit it in the water on 15 with wedges. Like they laid up and then
Wow.
hit it in the water, which
Yeah.
was very weird. I can't remember what happened to Goosen, but I remember for like the relevant hour when the tournament was on the line that I somehow saw every shot, and I felt like it was a miracle. It really is at Augusta to have that happen. So I walked away thinking, man, I'll never get a better experience than this. The only other thing, like that year from COVID, there were so many things that happened. I heard Patrick Reed and his caddy and a couple of other guys, they were behind DeChambeau, who ended up losing his tee shot on 4. You might remember he had to come all the way back to the tee, I think, on Saturday. And they were like mocking DeChambeau. And I was right there, and like they wouldn't do this, and they were like almost just talking to each other in normal voice, but you'd never hear it on TV. But I'm like, I can't believe I'm hearing this conversation as Reed is ripping DeChambeau. Now they're on the same tour together. And then when DJ was teeing off on 17, I was telling you how close we were. The caddy had to tell me to move because my shadow was over the tee.
Oh,
So,
James.
no, but I might have been puffy. Like we were both right there. I'm cognizant of this stuff. And he hadn't like addressed the ball yet, Pritchie.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
he just teed it up, was standing back, and it was like I wasn't like over the tee, but maybe I was like a foot away trying to stand still, and he's like, "Back up, kid." So, like I said, I could tell you one from every year. It's such a cool place. I also approached Paulina that year. Here's an embarrassing high school nerd story. There was nobody on the golf course, so Paulina's out following DJ. She's standing all by herself behind 7.
And you must know her a little bit, right? Like Wayne.
I know Wayne, but I figure she's all by herself. I got to shoot my shot, right? So I walk over and I'm like, "Hey, Paulina, James Duthie from TSN, how are you?" And she goes, "Oh yeah." And then I realized, like, I froze, and suddenly I was like grade 7 me at the middle school dance again, and I didn't know what else to say. So I go, "Hey," and she goes, "Hey." I go, "All right, have a good day," and I just kind of ran away. I was so embarrassed. Yeah, so
That is,
I'm such a nerd.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, it's pretty shameful.
You were just trying to say hello, right? And
I was trying to say hello, and then I realized I needed a follow up, and I hadn't really thought it out very well, and I had nothing else to say, and so I just kind of crept off by myself.
On that note, James, I want to thank you for providing all of your insight about Augusta National, and thank you for joining the Red Rooster podcast. We do a series of 3 questions at the end of every podcast, so I'm going to shoot these real quick to you.
Yeah,
you can go long or short. We don't care.
Okay.
Your absolute one favorite golf memory, super poignant to you, what you think about when you think about golf?
Like a personal or watching golf, either
Doesn't
or, I
matter.
suppose.
Yeah, either or.
I
Something you'll never forget.
it's such a. It'll either be that round at Augusta, or my only hole in one, which came 2 years ago, because that's kind of fresh in my
There
memory,
you
and it
go.
was only 128 yards. The guys at work always try to take it down to like 98 yards, but it wasn't. Back pin downhill par three at King's Riding, and I didn't see it go in. It was a weird time of the day, and I was just kind of a marker in a match because two guys were playing a match, and guys in matches sometimes I want buddies to come out to make sure nothing goes sideways. So they were all three of them missed the green, and they were all into their own thing. And I knew I hit a good shot, but nobody really. We thought it was in the back bunker, and so I walked up, and I was carrying at that time, so I put my bag on the edge, and no, I didn't actually. I kept my bag on because I wasn't sure what club I was going to hit, and I saw. I thought I was in the back bunker, and then as I walked across the green, I saw the ball mark, a significant ball mark, like 2.5 feet in front of the hole, and my heart started to race. And looking in that hole and seeing that little TaylorMade, I really did lose it. I'm a pretty calm guy, and I let out this primal, like yell, right? And just started running around the green. But I still had my bag on my back. It was like super embarrassing. But just that feeling is, I think now in retrospect, it's almost as good as seeing it go in off the tee, to walk up and see the ball in the hole, not knowing it's there. And so, yeah, that was because I didn't think I was. I'm in my 50s now, and I was getting to the point where I think I'm never going to get one. And I really, really hadn't scared one. I'd been like a foot away a bunch of times, but I'd never seen one lip out or anything like that. So that's pretty cool.
That is awesome. And every hole in one that people do see go in, they always kind of give the, like, is it actually in the hole? Like,
Right,
you never
right.
like confidently pick it out, right?
Right.
You just look in the hole like, is it there? Yeah.
Right.
Oh, thank God. I did see what I saw. Good. Kerry, number 2.
Number 2, James, is there a feeling in golf that keeps bringing you back? Is that maybe it's, is it flushing a shot, or you talked about you and your buddy sitting waiting for the sun to rise? Like, is there this feeling that you get from golf that keeps bringing you back to it?
Yeah, and I think it would just be that feeling of when you do get on fire for a few holes, or it's rarely an entire round for me. But I just think it's the greatest game in the world because of the mental test, because of how much you beat yourself up, or maybe over-congratulate yourself when you are good, how delusional you can be after you play 2 good rounds in a row, especially if you're, a mid-handicapper like myself. There's nothing better than that feeling when you think you've figured it out. And how many, like, I've had that so many times where, man, I've got this game figured out. My favorite one was in my 20s, when I was playing a lot of golf, let's say early 20s, and I broke 2 ribs playing football, and so couldn't play for a bit. But then we went on a guys trip, and so I didn't think I could play, but I wanted to come on the guys trip. So I said, I think I can play, but because the ribs were still sore, I was swinging like super light, and I couldn't take any practice swings, and shot like 77. It was probably only about the 4th time I'd ever broken 80. I'm like, holy crap. And then the next 3 weeks, I played the greatest golf of my life. Like, I was in the 70s every single round, probably 9 out of 12 or something like that. And the other ones were like 81. And I was playing Metcalf Golf Club in Ottawa, Fritchie.
Yeah.
And I was 2 under after 13 holes. And I remember going to the 14th tee, saying to myself, I have figured this game out. I am going to be a scratch golfer in no time and be like a single cap the rest of my life.
That's how this works.
And proceeded to, go like double, triple or something. I remember I was 2 under, and I think I shot 80 or 79 in the last 5 holes. So how bad is that? And I never got it back again. My ribs got better, and I started flailing away again. And So I don't know if there's a lesson about breaking your ribs, but for whatever and it's probably mental, right? It's probably took away all my expectations,
Mhm.
and I probably had better tempo. But you can't, no matter how much you tell yourself, you can't recreate that. You can't recreate that feeling of, and so I think it's just that's a long-winded way of saying just that feeling of thinking you've got it, and then of course you don't.
Yep, nice. Nobody does, really.
No,
So
no,
that's the beauty of the game.
yeah.
Finally, so we're a company that tries to give back to the game of golf. We every glove we sell, one goes to youth golf. We always ask our guests, do you have a person or an organization you'd like to highlight who plays it forward in golf?
Ooh, in golf, period.
Golf, period. Someone you know personally, or someone you work with, or whatever.
That has an organization.
Yeah.
Uh Geez, it's so funny because I've been playing in these sort of charity matches the last few years, where you have to pick a charity to donate to, and I've got a bunch of causes I support, but there's never been one that's purely golf related. And I would love to, if we do that again this year, because this could have it's a good amount of charity. If you win, I think we won last year, like $15,000 went to this charity. I would love to find one like that, just let underprivileged golfers play. Like I love the play sports and stuff that let people, it's more hockey driven, or that's the one, because of my role in hockey, I get exposed to it more, by kids who can't afford hockey equipment. But I think it's the same thing with golf. I think it's such a great game that it shouldn't be limited. And so I don't have a particular one, but I'm going to make it a homework assignment now to find something locally here in Ontario or Toronto, or maybe you guys can suggest one to me that does that gets kids who wouldn't have an opportunity to play golf a chance to play golf.
Awesome. That's great.
I want to say too, and I'm not blowing smoke because you were nice to me earlier, but every single person who uses your gloves, and multiple of them are on my panel, and it didn't come from me. It's not like I said, hey, Kerry and Brad are friends of mine, go buy their gloves. But Jeff O'Neill, who's a great golfer, is like a 2-cap. Dave Poulin, who plays all the time, former captain of the Philadelphia Flyers, and others, just absolutely love your gloves. They all say it's the single best golf glove they have ever used. I would concur. So you guys are not only helping people, but the product is freaking fantastic.
We love to hear it. Yeah, Jeff O'Neill might be our best customer in Canada, by the way. He buys them by the case.
Right.
I don't know if he rips through them or if he plays a ton of golf, if he gives them to friends, but our right-hand XL stock is severely depleted when he decides to make an order.
By the way, I also saw his first hole-in-one, which amazed me because he's a very good golfer. He's got great hands, and he probably could have done something decent in golf if he'd chosen that instead of hockey, because he hits it a mile. But he never had a hole-in-one. And only the first or second round I ever played with him, I think the first round, he's a member at Weston in Toronto. And there's a par 3, I think it's maybe 8 at Weston. It's a little par 3, which is blind over a bunker. And he hit a good shot. And it's funny, we were playing with Mike Zigomanis, another former NHL. And he was, before O hit, he was joking about how O never had a hole-in-one. And we were ribbing him, and he hit one, and he says, this might be it. And it was the same deal where you can't see on that hole where the pin placement was. And I shouldn't have done this because a guy should find out himself. But I was that guy who ran across the green because I wanted to see if it was in, and saw the ball first. And his reaction, he's a very quiet guy on the golf course. Like, again, he did similar to me. He went absolutely bananas. So I think witnessing other guys' holes-in-one is as special as getting one yourself.
That is definitely fun. I totally agree. James, hey man, appreciate it. Always enjoy watching you on TV. Are there any more books in the queue?
Not right now. I just thought of one other thing I have to say, Fritchie, though, before I go. Do not email me or do not tweet. Kerry, this is what Fritchie does. So when Fritchie was there the year as the analyst, we always get, and I understand this from the golf fan. So golf fans, they're not, most of them aren't picky enough to decipher between, CBS coverage and TSN bonus coverage. They're sitting down to watch golf. And the Masters has these strict restrictions where we can only show 12 and 13, can only show 15 and 16 and can only show 2 feature groups. And the Augusta picks who those groups are. So it's a complete crapshoot. Usually they'll try to pick, Tiger or Rom or whatever. But if Jason Day is 7 under, leading by 4 on Thursday, and he's not in one of the feature groups, and he's not on 12 and 13 or 15 and 16, we can't show him. And so I will always get social media saying, "Why are you guys showing this? This coverage sucks." And I have to politely explain to people that this is bonus coverage. When I grew up, you only saw the back 9 at Augusta. So you're getting 4 or 5 extra hours that I never got. And so Fritchie, because he witnessed me doing this, now every single year, he's the first guy to tweet out, "What are you doing, TSN? Why aren't you showing me Adam Hadwin?"
Stoking the fire.
Where are my Canadian players, James Duthie?
Every single year. I wait for it to happen. Do not do that this year. Show me you love me. Thanks for having me on, boys.
Yeah, man. Hey, we loved it, and thank you for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Love the stories, and looking forward to watching again this year. And love the coverage, man. Just love watching you on everything. It's amazing to see you jump from these different sports and how you quarterback them. So appreciate your time here today, and looking forward to another great Masters year. It's the kickoff to the golf season and just before the playoffs. So it's a special time of year.
Thank you, boys. Really appreciate being on.
Okay. Take care, James.
Thanks, James.
Okay,
man, he's been to Augusta so many times. He's seen so many things, and you can tell that golf means a lot to him, right? Like you can tell from his very first playing days, sneaking onto the Pineview golf course with his buddy, to now broadcasting at the Masters and talking about his first hole-in-one and Jeff O'Neill's first hole-in-one. You can tell golf means a lot to James, can't you?
Yeah. It was neat to hear his background. He got into it pretty young. I guess he's always enjoyed it. He didn't, I guess he aspired to be a Clemson football star, but no, he obviously. I don't
know why that didn't happen. Why didn't that happen?
That's awesome. But interesting start, and it feels like it's almost coming full circle. Like he's obviously around the game a lot, but he's fallen back in love with it, and now he's getting his kids into it, and I guess that's one of the great things about golf is just it is a game that you can play for a lifetime.
Yeah, and now we can sit back and watch the 23 Masters. It's going to be an amazing week. You still have some questions for me, don't you?
I do. I got a couple of questions. Like we said, we threw this out to our audience and said we'd answer a couple of questions each podcast. We've been given hundreds of them, so we'll try and pick off a couple each couple of weeks. And so I got 2 of them here. We got one of them. This is from Kent Mayer, and kind of timely. And his question is, what is your next new glove in the pipeline going to be?
Oh boy. Well, since Kent asked, we should tell him about the Sussex, our ultra premium, what we're calling our tournament glove for golfers who are obsessed with feel. Don't care so much about durability. We'll be releasing that, a couple months. We're doing the beta testing pretty soon among our audience. And I'm really excited about this glove because our gloves are built to last, right? But we should be able to offer a certain segment of our audience the absolute best glove, no cutting corners, the ultimate performance glove. Like you're playing your club championship and you don't care what you do with the glove after that. Like let's get our customers the absolute best feeling glove they've ever had.
Yeah, that's it. That's the Sussex. Probably the only negative feedback we get is your gloves. They are a little bit heavier. The thickness of the leather, that's on purpose. We've built a super soft, durable glove, and now here's your game, or the your most important round. this glove won't last as long, but it is our softest, thinnest glove. And so like you said, we're going through the beta testing here shortly. Lots of interest in that. And we should have the Sussex ready for, let's just say, summer of 2023. So thanks, Kent. Great question. Good timing. I'm going to go to another question here. This one we get a lot. And it's, how many rounds should you expect out of a new Red Rooster glove?
Okay, well, it's a good question. There's a lot of variables. If you've never cleaned your grips ever in your life and you're 7 years into your set of clubs, it may last 5 or 6 rounds. But if you're pretty good about cleaning your grips, wiping them off, a Red Rooster glove it's going to do its job for 8 to 10 rounds, and you can go longer and it'll last, and holes won't come out of the palm or anything. But a properly fitted Red Rooster golf glove is going to be really good for 8 to 10 rounds.
I get this in my customer service shifts, and my stock answer is, it's going to vary, right? There's a lot of different factors, but what I always say is, if you take good care of the glove, so that's you take it on and off between shots so it doesn't get too warm or wet. I often rotate multiple gloves, because if you just wear one, put it on the first tee and take it off after 18 in the middle of the summer, that you're going to go through them faster. Grips clean, that's huge, right? If you've got dirty old grips, new golf gloves don't last as long in those situations. And then when we say taking good care, it's just laying it flat, keeping them dry, between rounds. I stretch it out a little bit longer than you. I usually say, 6 to 10 rounds. 10's kind of on the high end. Glove doesn't owe you a thing after that. And that's not to say that you can't play longer, but it's typically starting to get a little bit slippery by then. And, 6 rounds on the low end. If you're a more discerning golfer, then you'll probably be changing them up a little bit faster. But I think it's all those. It's all about, do you have newer clean grips? That's key. And then if you're taking good care of the gloves and you're rotating them around, you'll be somewhere in that 6 to 10 round range.
Yeah, and hell, we've had customers email and say, I've had 40 rounds with my Red Rooster glove and you can't tell. Now, I'm assuming you probably can tell a little bit, but I can't imagine. But some guys take really good care. They grip it loose, and maybe they clean their grips after every round. I have no idea. But we do appreciate and we do encourage all these podcast questions, because we're going to answer a couple per episode.
Yep. So we'll reach back out to Kent Mayer. He had the question on the Sussex, and Troy Appleby. So we'll drop you guys a line. Again, appreciate all the questions, some great ones. We'll get back to everybody at least by email, and keep reading a couple each couple weeks on the pod.
Kerry, where does everyone find us?
On socials at Red Rooster Golf, or online at redroostergolf.com.
That is correct. That's good of you to know. All right. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Red Rooster Golf Podcast. Our special thanks to James Duthie of TSN Canada. For my partner, Kerry Moher, I am Brad Fritch. We'll see you again soon. Until then, tee it high, let it fly, and cock a doodle-doo.